You are not lazy, and the fact that you keep telling yourself you are is actually part of the problem. Think about it. You don't lack ambition. You don't lack ideas. You don't lack vision. In fact, you probably want more from life than most people around you. You imagine a different future, a sharper version of yourself, more control, more freedom, more meaning, and yet your days look strangely empty. Hours disappear. You scroll, you plan, you promise yourself you'll start tomorrow. At night, the frustration creeps in because deep down, you know something doesn't add up. How can someone who wants so much do so little? Most people will give you the same answer. You're just lazy. You lack discipline. You don't want it badly enough. But here's the unsettling truth. Some of the most ambitious people on the planet struggle the most with action. Not because they're weak, but because ambition itself can quietly sabotage the brain. And once that mechanism kicks in, the harder you push, the more stuck you feel. This video is not here to motivate you. It's here to explain something most people never understand about themselves, why ambition and laziness so often show up together, and how that trap forms without you even noticing. If you've ever felt this contradiction in your own life, subscribe to the channel. It helps this kind of content reach the people who actually need it. Now, let's slow everything down, because the mistake almost everyone makes starts with how they define laziness in the first place. Most videos about productivity start by telling you what to do. Wake up earlier, delete distractions, work harder, be more disciplined. But if those things actually worked for ambitious people, you wouldn't be here right now. Because information is not the problem, understanding is. This video is not about forcing yourself to act, it's about understanding why action feels so difficult in the first place, especially for people who want more from life. What you're about to hear is not motivation, it's a complete mental model. We're going to break this down layer by layer. First, we'll look at why ambition increases pressure instead of energy. Then we'll examine how your brain interprets important goals as threats. After that, we'll uncover how inertia, dopamine, guilt, and perfectionism quietly lock you in place. And finally, we'll connect all of it into one pattern that explains why so many driven people feel stuck for years. This isn't a checklist. It's an explanation of the system you're operating inside, whether you realize it or not. Each part builds on the last. And as we go, the picture becomes harder to ignore. Because once you see the trap clearly, you stop blaming yourself and start understanding what actually needs to change. Let's start with the most common misunderstanding of all. The idea that laziness means you don't want it badly enough. The common belief is simple. If someone is lazy, they must not care enough. No ambition, no hunger, no real desire to change. But when you look closely at ambitious people, that explanation falls apart. Because ambitious people don't lack desire. They have too much of it. They spend a lot of time thinking about the future, visualizing outcomes, imagining who they could become. And here's the flip most people never notice. The clearer that future becomes, the heavier the present starts to feel. Your brain constantly compares what you are doing right now to what you believe you should be doing. And the gap is brutal. One small action feels meaningless next to a massive goal. Writing one paragraph feels stupid compared to finishing the book. Sending one email feels pointless compared to building the business. Working for 20 minutes feels embarrassing compared to the life you want. So instead of feeling energized, you feel resistance. Ambition raises the psychological cost of starting. This is why ambitious people often spend more time planning than executing. Planning keeps the dream alive without forcing you to confront how small the first step actually is. It feels productive. It feels responsible, but it keeps you safely disconnected from action. And the longer that gap exists between who you are and who you want to be, the more pressure builds. Eventually, that pressure doesn't motivate, it freezes. Which brings us to the next layer of the trap. Because the problem isn't that you don't want it badly enough. It's how your brain reacts when something finally does matter. Most people assume motivation should come first. You're supposed to feel ready, confident, energized. And when that feeling doesn't show up, you assume something is wrong with you. But your brain doesn't treat important goals as opportunities. It treats them as risks. When a task matters to your future, your identity, or your self-worth, your brain starts scanning for danger. Not physical danger, psychological danger. Effort means uncertainty. Uncertainty means you might fail, and failure threatens how you see yourself. So instead of pushing you forward, your brain slows you down. It offers safer alternatives. Check your your phone, tidy something small, watch another video. Do anything that keeps you busy without keeping you exposed. That's why you can do low-stakes tasks all day with no problem, but freeze when it's time to work on the thing that actually matters. Ambition raises the emotional stakes of action, and the higher the stakes feel, the stronger the avoidance response becomes. From the outside, it looks like procrastination. From the inside, it feels like hesitation, overthinking, waiting for the right moment. But that moment rarely comes, because the brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect you from perceived harm. The problem is, once avoidance begins, it doesn't stay neutral. It creates momentum in the wrong direction. And that momentum has a name: inertia. In physics, inertia is simple. An object at rest stays at rest. And the same rule applies to human behavior. Getting started is the hardest part of any task. Not because the task is difficult, but because it requires an initial push. Here's where ambition quietly makes things worse. Ambitious people don't think in small steps. They think in outcomes. Instead of open the document, it becomes finish the project. Instead of start learning, it becomes change my life. The brain looks at that and calculates the cost. Too much effort, too much uncertainty, too much energy. So it refuses to engage. This is why you can spend hours preparing, organizing, and planning, but still feel unable to start. You're trying to overcome inertia with willpower instead of reducing the starting force. That's why tiny actions work when motivation fails. Not because they're motivational tricks, but because they slip under the brain's threat radar. Write one sentence. Work for 2 minutes. Open the file and do nothing else. Once motion begins, something important changes. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. Momentum replaces resistance. But most ambitious people never allow momentum to form. They aim straight for the finish line. And while they wait for the perfect push, another system trains the brain in the opposite direction. Dopamine is often misunderstood. Most people think it rewards success. It doesn't. Dopamine rewards relief. Every time you avoid a difficult task and switch to something easy, your brain feels a small release of tension. That release comes with a dopamine signal. Scroll your phone, watch a video, check notifications, grab a snack. The discomfort fades, and your brain quietly learns a rule: avoiding effort feels good. This is where ambitious people get trapped the hardest, because the more important a goal feels, the more discomfort it creates before you even start, and the stronger the relief feels when you avoid it. Over time, this rewires motivation itself. Effort becomes associated with stress. Avoidance becomes associated with comfort. You're not losing motivation. Your brain is training itself away from it. That's why you can feel mentally exhausted after doing almost nothing. Your brain has been in constant conflict all day, and when the day ends, another emotion takes over: guilt, which seems like it should push you forward, but it does the opposite. Guilt feels like accountability. It feels like proof that you care, so you assume it will eventually force you to change. But guilt rarely creates action. It creates identity damage. When you end the day telling yourself, "I wasted another day, I'm lazy, I'm falling behind," your brain doesn't hear motivation. It hears a label, and once that label sticks, action becomes heavier, because now effort isn't just about the task. It's about facing the version of yourself you're disappointed in. So you avoid again, not because you don't care, but because you don't want to feel worse. This is why ambitious people often feel more frustrated than unambitious ones. They see the gap clearly, they feel it constantly, and that pain doesn't disappear. It turns into coping strategies. One of the most common is perfectionism. Perfectionism looks like high standards, but psychologically, it's fear wearing a professional outfit. You tell yourself you just want to do things properly, that you care about quality, that you're waiting until you're ready. But what's really happening is simpler. As long as you don't start, you don't have to face the possibility that the result won't match the fantasy. Ambitious people often have a very clear image of success, and that clarity makes imperfect action feel threatening. So you wait for better timing, more knowledge, more confidence, a clearer plan. And while you're waiting, nothing moves. Perfectionism keeps ambition alive without risk. It allows you to believe in your potential without testing it. That's why it feels productive even when it isn't. Because if you never start, you never fail. And if you never fail, the dream stays intact. But this comes at a cost. The longer you wait, the heavier starting feels, and the more pressure ambition puts on you. Eventually, you reach a point where pushing harder doesn't help, because the real problem isn't discipline. It's that you're relying on willpower in a system that drains it. Most people think discipline is a personality trait. Some people have it, some people don't. But that explanation doesn't survive contact with reality. People who act consistently are not more motivated. They are less exposed to friction. They don't rely on willpower. They rely on structure. Their environment makes action easier than avoidance. Their phone is not within arm's reach. Their workspace is not cluttered. Their time is protected instead of negotiated. Ambitious people often do the opposite. They keep everything available, every distraction, every option, and then they expect willpower to win. It doesn't. Willpower is fragile. It drains with stress, decisions, and fatigue. So ambition collapses under friction. Not because you lack discipline, but because your environment is constantly voting against you. When action requires constant self-control, avoidance becomes the default. And even when you fix your environment, there is still a larger force shaping behavior, one that has nothing to do with your personality. There is a reason this pattern is so common right now. Modern systems are designed to let you survive without changing much. You can pay your bills, you can distract yourself endlessly, you can feel busy without making progress. Stable routines, subscription lifestyles, debt that stretches quietly over decades. Nothing forces you to move. So ambition turns inward. Instead of becoming action, it becomes frustration. Instead of momentum, it becomes self-criticism. You start blaming yourself for a situation that is partially structural. This doesn't mean you're powerless, but it does mean the trap is deeper than try harder. Because when the system allows stagnation, ambition without leverage becomes painful, and pain alone doesn't create change. Only motion does. Which brings us to the final shift. The biggest mistake ambitious people make is believing change requires intensity, a big breakthrough, a perfect plan, a massive burst of effort. But intensity burns out. Momentum compounds. Small actions done consistently teach your brain something new. I am someone who moves. Once that identity starts forming, motivation follows automatically. Not because life becomes easy, but because resistance gets quieter. Action collapses fantasy into reality, and reality, unlike imagination, can actually move. Ambition stops feeling like a burden when it's paired with motion, even imperfect motion. So here's the full pattern, all in one place. Ambition creates a vivid future. That future raises the emotional stakes of action. High stakes trigger avoidance. Avoidance feeds dopamine relief. Relief builds inertia. Inertia creates guilt. Guilt damages identity, and the cycle reinforces itself. None of this means you are broken. It means your system is misaligned. Laziness is not a personality flaw. It's a signal. A signal that ambition is pushing against friction instead of flowing into motion. The goal is not to crush yourself with discipline, it's to remove the forces that keep stopping you. So the real question is not, why am I lazy? It's this: where exactly is the friction hiding in your life right now? If this video helped you see that pattern more clearly, subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support this kind of deep, explanatory content. And if you want, tell me in the comments which part of the trap you recognized yourself in.